Welcome to The Point. We've got another 26 minutes. I hope it's going to be very interesting for you. We're continuing on the theme of evolution is impossible, and this is the overview, part 4. I'm afraid this is a very big subject, so it will be going on for quite a long time. But just so you don't get bored with the whole thing, I'm going to put some other programs on other material between evolution, all the different things on evolution. By the way, if you have any comments to make, do write to info@revelationtv.com. We'd love to hear from you. And also, there's a lot of free material on my website. Nothing for sale on my website at all. It's called freechristianteaching.org. That's freechristianteaching.org. Plenty of material on that. And there's going to be a whole lot more material on creation and evolution, because all of these programs are going to be on this website in the very near future. The whole thing is being completely revamped right now. Now, at the end of the last program, number 3, we were talking about the Big Bang. So I'm just going to do a tiny bit of a recap. We'll look at image number 32, which is an image of the sun. And we were talking about how the evolutionists had commented that, in their opinion, not mine, all of the 118 known elements evolved from hydrogen and helium. The elements of the sun, a process known as chemical evolution. At the end of the last program, in image number 33, I actually talked briefly about nuclear fusion in the sun, which actually does happen, where hydrogen is converted into helium. It's a totally amazing supernatural phenomenon. It's how God provides all the energy for our solar system. In my opinion, it is only an opinion because all of this is an opinion, but in my opinion, it could not possibly have happened by chance. But it is the only place, this I am sure, where hydrogen is converted into helium in this way. It all happens at 15 million degrees centigrade and at massive pressure, and with 100% efficiency doing nuclear fusion, which we cannot do. Humans can't do nuclear fusion. We can do nuclear fission, as in Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombs, and also in the nuclear fission factories around the place. They're very inefficient by comparison, and you've probably seen the nuclear waste, yellow drums with nuclear waste in them. That's because the nuclear fission is very inefficient and causes waste. Now, and I also commented in image 33b that if the evolutionists tried to do what God does in the sun, I suspect, but I don't know, but I suspect we'd end up with a big explosion. Because we're dealing with a potential nuclear explosion here, and only God, in my opinion, could control this thing. Now, I want to move now to the next statement. The incredibly complex galaxies, this is the evolutionist statement, not mine. The incredibly complex galaxies, solar system, the sun, the stars, planets and moons around the planets, comets, asteroids, and space dust all evolved by pure chance. I think they've invented a god called Chance, who seems to be a very clever god. He doesn't exist, but in their opinion, this god called Chance made all the galaxies, the solar system, the sun, the stars, the planets, the moons around the planets, the comets, the asteroids, and the space dust, all by chance. Well, actually, I'll tell you what, I'm not even very good at making a car. And I'm definitely not good at making a car by chance. Don't ask me to make a universe by chance. I wouldn't know where to begin. I wouldn't actually know where to begin to make a car by chance, but I definitely wouldn't know where to make a universe by chance, and I don't know where they would start either, but we'll move on. Now, according to the Big Bang Theory, the original mass known as a singularity exploded into a highly organized universe. We did talk at the last program about this original mass, which was trillions of miles across, and then within 40 years they changed their mind, said its singularity is so small, it's smaller than a subatomic particle, and you couldn't possibly see it even with an electron microscope. Decided to call it a singularity. Very useful to make something invisible, because then nobody can prove you wrong. Sorry, I'm being a bit cynical here. I'm being a bit rude. But then I think we should be rude, because the thing is, this is all flying against the Bible. The Bible is very clear in Genesis 1 verse 1 about the origins of the universe, and they have invented an alternative explanation which excludes God completely. Now, what they have now said is that this universe which happened by chance all organized itself into these all these spinning stars, moons, planets, and everything else by chance. Now, this goes against the second law of thermodynamics, and I'm just going to give you an overview now of this, and I will be spending a lot more time on it later on. The second law of thermodynamics basically says you cannot make something when things progress, they progress down rather than up. The real problem is something called entropy. I don't know if you've heard of entropy. I don't want to get too involved with the detailed discussion about the second law of thermodynamics right now, because it is a very big subject in itself, but maybe I can just simply explain that a high energy system degrades into a low energy system. For example, if you've got a hot cup of tea and you leave it alone for half an hour, guess what? It becomes colder. That's because a high energy system, a hot cup of tea has a lot of energy in it, becomes a cold cup of tea because the energy in the form of heat dissipates. I'll tell you what doesn't happen is the hot cup of tea doesn't get hotter. Otherwise, there might be a bit of a problem, mightn't we? We will, if we left a cup of tea lying around and it got hotter, we'd probably burn ourselves every time we had a drink from our cup of tea. But it doesn't. It gets colder. Right. I want to be serious now and move along to help you understand where I'm coming from. Let's look at image number 34, which is a home computer. Not all of you, but a lot of you will have a home computer, but if you haven't got one, you're certainly familiar with what I'm talking about. Okay, image number 34 is a home computer. Now, if I dropped a hand grenade into your home computer, would you honestly expect it to turn into a NASA supercomputer in image number 35? A NASA supercomputer. These are the most complex and sophisticated computers in the world, on the planet. They're the most sophisticated man-made computers on the planet. Let me tell you that your brain is far, far more sophisticated a computer than any NASA supercomputer. Your brain, which only weighs 3 pounds, can do far more calculations far more quickly than all of the NASA supercomputers put together. That's how complex your brain is. And let me tell you that your brain did not happen by chance. No way did your brain ever happen by chance. Anyway, moving on. If I dropped a hand grenade into your home PC, would you expect it to turn into a NASA supercomputer? I'm hoping you would say no, you wouldn't expect that. But that is what the evolutionists expect you to believe, because they say that their singularity, which is so small you can't see it, which is very convenient for them, exploded, and they know exactly when it happened, 13.75 billion years ago, even though they weren't there, and caused all the ordered system which we now see. Let me just go through that again. They're saying something which is so small you can't see happened at a time when they weren't there, 13.75 billion years ago, and exploded into everything which you can see by chance. I just think this is all a bit much. Do you? I think this is just all too much to believe. That's why it's called the theory of evolution. Let's look at image 36. That is an image of the galaxy that God created. Now, the evolutionists want you to believe that the entire universe evolved by chance from this initial tiny source, so small you can't see it, called a singularity. And this process is called stellar and planetary evolution. All the stars and all the planets and everything else all happened by chance from something so small you can't see it. And they're so certain of this that it all happened 13.75 billion years ago, even though they weren't there. That's why it's called the theory of evolution. They say that the incredibly complex orbits of all known space bodies in the solar system, such as planets, all happened purely by chance. Now, I can tell you with absolute certainty this is complete rubbish. And I'm absolutely certain of this. I hope I've got your attention. I know that what they're saying here is absolutely wrong, and I'll prove it to you. And I'll try and make it simple. Let's look at image number 37. When I first started looking at the planets, this was a long time ago, there were 9 planets known. Now they think there may be 10 or even 11. But anyway, I originally started to study 9 of them. Now, the planets all rotate around the sun. Of course, the Earth rotates around the sun too. Now, there is a very, very important principle, a law in physics called the law of conservation of angular momentum. Right, I'll just make a very simple explanation of the law of angular momentum. If your name is David Beckham and you kick a football, that football will rotate. If you're very clever, you'll bend it like Beckham and it'll rotate very carefully, but it will keep rotating the same way. That's how David Beckham is so clever at getting goals, because he can do these very clever football shots. But the point is that I'm trying to make is that the football rotates in the same way. Now, in the case of the Big Bang, this original tiny thing, which is so small you can't see it, was supposed, so they tell us, to have spun very fast, because it then exploded in a frictionless environment. In other words, in space, where there was nothing. Friction is, of course, we get something in contact with something else. That causes friction. Well, this singularity, this thing which they believe happened 13.75 billion years ago, there was nothing else there. There was just a singularity. So it was a frictionless environment. So there was this thing spinning round, this singularity, so small you can't see it, spinning round, and it all exploded in a frictionless environment. Now, according to the law of conservation of linear momentum, or angular momentum, I should say, the angular momentum, remember the David Beckham football, everything that comes off that original singularity should be spinning in the same direction. If you imagine a football exploding, everything spins in the same direction, as the football was. I'll make that a bit clearer. David Beckham hits the football and it's going round and round, and suddenly the football explodes. All the little bits that come off the football are all going round and round in the same direction. Does that make sense? Right, well, go back to the Big Bang Theory. All the little bits that come off the singularity, they're all rotating in the same direction. So, according to the law of conservation of angular momentum, all the planets should be rotating in the same direction. The trouble is, they're not. They're not rotating in the same direction, because we now can look at the planets in our solar system, and we know that Venus, Uranus, and Pluto spin in the opposite direction. 6 of them spin one way, and 3 of them spin the other way. And that is opposed to the law of conservation of angular momentum. Now, it gets even more complicated than that. I hope I've got your attention, because this is actually quite interesting stuff, isn't it? Now, these planets, they've got 63 moons going around the planets. We've got 1 going around planet Earth. I'm sure you've seen the moon at night time. Sometimes you see the moon at daytime as well. But that is spinning round the Earth. All right? Some of the planets have got 2 or more moons going around them. According to the law of conservation of angular momentum, all the planets and all the moons should be rotating in the same way, because the original singularity was spinning very fast in a frictionless environment, exploded, and all the planets should be moving in the same way, and all the moons. And I've already told you that 3 of the planets, Uranus, Pluto, and Saturn, are going in the opposite direction. But now we find that the moons, the 63 moons, some of them are going one way, some of them are going the other way. And just to really confuse the evolutionists, some planets have moons orbiting in both directions. Some of the moons have orbiting in both directions. So in our system, 3 of the planets, Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune, have moons orbiting in both directions. Now, I didn't make these things up. You can read all about this in the Astronomical Almanac for the year 1989, the Washington, D.C. U.S. Government Printing Office, 1989, on page 88. There we are. So, from the law of conservation of angular momentum, we can see that if our solar system evolved spontaneously by a Big Bang, all the moons should orbit their planets in the same direction. And now I want to show you a slightly naughty picture. I want to show you image 37b. This is Jesus Christ, who created everything in life itself. And do you know what? This is my theory. I don't know this to be true. It's not in the Bible. It's just my theory. I think that Jesus Christ purposely made some of the planets to rotate in the opposite direction, and purposely made some of the moons to go around some of the planets in one direction, some to go around in the other direction, and some to go around in both directions, just to totally confuse the evolutionists and prove them without any shadow of doubt they're talking unadulterated rubbish. I'm sorry, but there is no other word for it. I'm being really rude on this program. I'm not normally a rude person, but I'm normally considered quite a sort of gentle sort of person. But when it comes to this subject, you see, what they're saying is anti-biblical, humanist, atheist rubbish. That's the only way I can describe it. It's totally anti-biblical, and they're trying to discredit the God who created the universe. And as far as I'm concerned, they're not succeeding. You can make up your own decision. So I believe that Jesus has a sense of humor. So why else would he make planets with moons revolving in both directions? Well, I think he did it on purpose. I think he did it to purposely confuse the evolutionists. Right, let's move on now to our own planet, which is planet Earth, image number 38. Now, our Earth is seriously complex. To support life, you have to have literally thousands of what are called parameters. To support life, it's very, very precarious. Well, life isn't precarious, but you can only have life when certain conditions are fulfilled. I'm going to read some of them out to you. I'm only going to read out a few of them, but there are actually literally millions of them. You and I, we can only live in a certain temperature. I know we say, gosh, it's very hot today and it's very cold today, but compared with the vastness of temperature range that could be, our bodies could be boiling or freezing. I mean, for example, if the Earth was 1% closer to the sun than actually it is, the blood in our body would boil. If the Earth was 4% further away, our bodies would freeze like a block of ice. So you can see that that is just one of literally millions of parameters. And I mean millions. I'm making this up. There are millions of parameters that have got to be exactly right. Now, there's a magnetic field. If there wasn't a magnetic field, you'd all float off into space. So would I. If the magnetic field was too great, we wouldn't be able to get up off the floor. There is a magnetic field, and it is just right. There's a partial pressure of all the gases in the atmosphere. The atmosphere is mostly nitrogen with a bit of oxygen as well, and carbon dioxide and other bits and pieces. But the point is, the pressure in those gases is just right so that you and I, we can breathe the oxygen into our bodies and so into our bloodstream, etc., and so that the plants can breathe carbon dioxide into their leaves and breathe out oxygen. It only happens if the partial pressure of the gases is just right. That is a parameter. The rotation period of the Earth is spinning round. At the equator, it's traveling at about 1,000 miles an hour. I don't know if you've ever been anywhere near the equator, say Africa or somewhere. You wouldn't be aware that you're traveling through space at 1,000 miles an hour, but you are. Now, if you were going much faster, say 5,000 miles an hour, you go flying off into outer space. So there again is another parameter. The gravitational forces in the universe. We have tides on planet Earth. We're familiar with the high tide and the low tide, which is caused by the moon's gravitational field. I'll be talking about that later on, but that is another parameter. The water vapor saturation. Sometimes people say, well, it's very humid today. Sometimes people say it's very dry today, and so on. These are all parameter. The availability of natural resources like water and food and all the rest of it, and wood to make our furniture with, and materials to make a house with, all these things had to be available. Now, there are literally millions and millions and millions of these parameters. And the evolutionists boldly say that all of this stuff happened by chance. It all became perfect by chance. Well, I tell you what, I'll be honest with you, I've never made anything perfect, ever. I'd like to try and do my best. I've never made a perfect television program, and I never will. I was a doctor. I wasn't a perfect doctor. I tried to be, but I wasn't. I have never done anything perfectly. But this Earth is perfect. This Earth is perfect for the maintenance of life. Now, I have never made anything perfect, and I never will, but I tell you what, I never made anything perfect. I definitely wouldn't make anything perfect by chance. Definitely not. Your television is a sophisticated computer, and it did not happen by chance. No, it didn't. The car you drive in or the bus you drive in every day, it didn't happen by chance. No, it was designed. Everything about our universe is carefully designed by a God who is a super intelligent God. There are literally millions and millions of other finely tuned and interdependent parameters which all have zero variation tolerance to maintain life. In other words, it can't be a little bit colder or a little bit hotter in the grand scheme of things, because that would affect the water pressure. The saturation of water vapor would affect all sorts of things. Even the gravitational field is affected by the temperature. They're all interdependent, and yet these evolutionists want you to think it all happened by chance. I'm sorry, it's rubbish. It's absolute rubbish. Now, I've only got a few minutes left. I just want to introduce you to some unscientific rubbish, briefly, called the law of biogenesis. Look at image number 38A, where you've got a plant. This is, by the way, a cartoon, intentionally, a plant growing ducks. Have you ever seen a plant growing ducks? I hope you haven't. Well, I'll tell you what, I haven't. I've never seen a plant which grows ducks. Because, I'll tell you why, there's a law of biogenesis. Now, this is what the evolutionists teach us, that the spontaneous generation theory, this is the theory of how life evolved by chance 3.5 billion years ago, they call it the spontaneous generation theory. It states that all life on planet Earth descended from a common single cell arising by chance in the primordial ooze 3.5 billion years ago. Amazing. This is what they say. It all happened by chance. Life arose by chance on planet Earth from a common single cell arising by chance in the primordial slime 3.5 billion years ago. Now, when they said that, they obviously were not aware of the next picture, which is image 38B, which is the law of biogenesis. In the law of biogenesis, it basically says the law of biogenesis states that life cannot come from non-living materials. Life can only come from living organisms. That's what the law of biogenesis states, and it's a basically inviolable. It's basically a law that cannot be violated. You can't change that law. It's just one of the many, many laws. Now, the evolutionists go on and say, this primitive life arose by chance out of the primordial ooze sometime after the evolution of planet Earth, which was 4.54 billion years ago, and this process is known as the spontaneous generation of life. Now, nobody's ever seen life arising from an inanimate object. I tell you what, if you think that life evolves from an inanimate object, I'd caution you, be careful, don't go in the garden, because there might be a big rock at the bottom of the garden which might suddenly change into some nasty crocodile to come and eat you up. Well, that's what they believe. They're entitled to their beliefs, but I tell you what, I don't agree with them. Anyway, we're progressing very slowly through evolution. This is number 4. And we will be carrying on for quite a long time, I'm afraid, because this is a huge subject. This is number 4. The next one will be number 5. But I will be doing other subjects, and do write at info@revelationtv.com with your comments. I'd love to hear from you. Info@revelationtv.com, and get onto my website, freechristianteaching.org. Bless you. Love to see you. I hope to see you again soon.